Okay, my friends. Um, 2023 press plan workshop. Press plan is a mouthful. um, the idea here is that I want to set you guys up for a very successful 2023. And I very, very, very firmly believe for the members of this group, as well as for my own clients, that part of the success that we see going into the next year comes from having a plan and understanding what is coming up. So we're not always feeling like we're playing catch up, right? Oh my God, I have this coming out. How do I get pressed for it, right? I want you guys to come away from this workshop feeling like you have a good idea and understanding and plan in place that you're ready to implement throughout 2023. I want to say there's a couple of ways that you can approach this, and I've set the workshop up in this way. So there's one of two ways that I want you to think about utilizing this workshop. So the first one would be to create a plan for the entire year where you're thinking, okay, here's my business, here's what I need to happen. We're going to put a plan together so I have an idea of what I'm pitching in January, and then also what I'm pitching in December. Okay. And making sure that it works with the way that your business is going to run for the entire year. Okay. That would be one way to approach this. This would be for somebody who has, say, a business with, some services, and they're looking to grow that business with those services throughout the entire year. Okay, that would be my recommendation for how you would approach this plan. The other way to approach this plan would be to think about various campaigns. So for example, if you're launching a book in the spring, you could use this press plan to walk you through how you're going to launch that specific product. Okay, same thing, Sarah and Tatiana, I know you guys are sort of here thinking of that not-for-profit. So I want you guys to approach this workshop as creating a press plan for that specific product. The other thing I want you guys to think about is I want you to be able to use this workshop to create press plans throughout the year. So as you're launching something new, or as you're shifting gears from, say, the not-for-profit to the one of the other segments of your business, I want you to be able to come back, refer to this workshop, walk through these steps again, and have a press plan built for various campaigns during the year. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so we're either thinking full year or we're thinking shorter campaigns. Okay, but I'm calling this the 2023 press plan, whether you're taking this in chunks or not. But you'll see as we're going through here. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is, let's just talk about what a press plan is. What is it? What is the idea here? What is it that we're building? Okay, and then we'll get to actually building it. So this is where we're gonna do some some individual breakouts on each of these 4 topics that we're going to be talking about. So this is where I want you to have your workbook ready, or your piece of paper or your Word document, or however you're doing this. So the first piece that goes into building a press plan is you really do want to think about your goals. Okay. And I'm saying goals, this is a very broad use of goals. Again, so this is maybe your goals for 2023 for your business. Maybe this is goals for a specific campaign, a specific book, a specific product, whatever it is. Maybe you're launching a course this year. The goals of the press plan. Okay. So these are really what your primary outcomes are. So at the end, when you've executed this press plan, whether it's a 3-month, a 6-month, a 12-month press plan, at the end of it, what are your primary outcomes? What are you looking to accomplish during the duration of this plan? Okay. This is looking at big picture achievements, right? What are those things that you're going to look at, go, wow, that was a big win? Right? What are those things? What are those elements of your press plan that are going to leave you feeling like you have achieved something at the end? Okay. I also want you to think short and long-term goals. And this is, again, going to kind of depend on how you're approaching this workshop, right? A short-term goal could be, if you're doing a 3-month campaign, a short-term goal could be a week long, right? What's going to happen next week? What's going to happen the following week? Okay. The long-term goal for a 3-month press plan is the 3-month period. And then maybe also looking at how are you leveraging that beyond that initial launch period or that initial campaign, right? Longer term goals, if you're thinking for the whole year, your short term goals are maybe your monthly goals or your quarterly goals. And then your long term goals are thinking, where do you want to be at this time next year heading into 2024? Okay. So how you're defining the length of your goals is entirely up to how you're approaching this workshop. Really what the goals are is the what. What are we doing? What are we creating? What are we accomplishing? Okay. For our goals, we want to answer that question of what are we doing? What are we going to do during this period? Okay. So this is going to be our first break. So this is just a 3-minute break. I'm going to switch my screen share just to a 3-minute timer, and I'm going to shut my camera off so you guys don't feel like I'm staring at you. Feel free to shut your camera off as well if that makes you more comfortable. At the end of the 3 minutes, I will turn my camera back on. I'll switch back to the presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity to talk and share, or we can just move on to the next piece. Okay, any questions from here? Great. Okay, so I am going to switch up my screen share here. You got a fancy little timer all ready to go. Okay, so this is the start of our 3 minutes. So this is the opportunity for you just to start thinking about those goals, utilize whatever resources you need, pen, paper, or the workbook if you want to, okay? Okay, does anybody want to share what they wrote or have any questions? Need an example? Okay. Oh, good. Goals are pretty easy. So, I mean, so for my dummy, So my kind of fake client. So during my time when we're writing, I'm creating a 3-month launch strategy for a book for a fictional client. So I'm kind of building, so as I'm going through, I'm building a press plan for the launch of this book, this fictional client's book. So some of my goals were, to get on 5 podcasts during that 3-month period, have 2 other media appearances, write 2 articles for books. So these are some very specific goals based on a very specific launch period. And then, some bigger picture goals, get that #1 Amazon bestseller list, make X number of dollars within the first few months of launch, and then some of just those more abstract goals. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're thinking about in terms of goals. Did anybody have any questions or want to share anything? Hi, Tanya.
I actually have a question. Since I'm so new to the whole thing, I guess as Sarah probably knows more, but for a new company, like for us, we like just starting up, how like you share like very specific examples, 2 press releases, this and that. Like, how do we decide how many do we need? Like, what do we start with and stuff like that if we don't really know yet? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that comes from just a little bit of the strategizing. So when you and Sarah are brainstorming with big picture strategy, it is, when you're talking about a press release, right? Like I would definitely recommend building in some time to do a press release at the launch of the not-for-profit, right? Mm-hmm. To get that coverage. I think Sarah and I have sort of talked about press release strategy. Whether you like in terms of international, national, lower price, higher price distribution. There really isn't like a specific formula. It's basically, what you're able to accomplish. Right. So, for the fact that I said like, hey, 5 podcasts, 2 other media appearances for my fictional client, that would be within their capacity to do. Right. So there isn't like a formula of like, these are the number of press appearances you need to make. It really just comes down to what your overall strategy looks like and then what capacity you have to execute that strategy. Right. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions before we move on? Anyone want to share? No. So Sarah says, so both big goals and small goals are in the same area. Yeah, whatever. For this particular one, because we're, and Sarah, maybe, I don't know if are you thinking like the whole year or are you thinking a campaign? I know you and I talked recently. Are you thinking specifically like for the podcast?
I guess when I saw goals, I was thinking, like I started writing down, I was like, oh, right, you said for 1. And then I remembered afterwards, after I submitted the question, that you had suggested focusing on 1 piece for now. And then obviously I go back and repeat the process for like either the podcast or the program or.
Yeah. So, Sarah, I think you could be one of these people. I think it just sort of depends on what you're feeling like. If you did want to do something big picture, so for your like overall business, or if you wanted to kind of break it down into chunks, right? For, the podcast, the course, your services, and kind of approach things, like you said, kind of repeat the process for the different areas. But yeah, in terms of like big and small goals, it really just comes down to like what you're focusing on. And then, yeah, like I said, it could be like a weekly goal, it could be a monthly goal, or it could be like the whole year if you're doing the entire 2023. Cool. Okay. All right. Moving on. Let me do a little screen share here. Okay. So those were our goals. So the next piece of this is the strategy. Okay. So there's really 4, like I said, there's 4 areas that we're focusing on at sort of this preliminary stage of building your press plan. So number 1 is goals. Number 2 is the strategy. This is the how. Okay. You know the what, you want to achieve. The strategy is like, how are you going to achieve it? Right. How are you going to achieve those goals? What steps do you need to take in order to reach those goals? Right. And this is really, you can also think about this. The other idea is like your approach, right? What is the approach that you're using to get through these goals, right? So this could be, in my fictional press plan that I'm creating here. So, you know, we have 5 podcasts is one of our goals. Well, how am I going to get that done? Right? Am I going to need to join the podcast collective? Am I going to need to, I'm going to need to start, you know, I'm going to need to build a media list. Am I going to have to start following certain podcasts on social media, right? How I want to get on 5 podcasts. How am I going to do that? What is my strategy in order to achieve those goals? Okay. So we're going to turn our timer back on. For this one, because we only have 3 minutes, you don't have to do at this stage, like you don't have to think about doing all like strategy for all of your goals, because they could be quite different, right? Each goal could be a little bit complicated on how you're going to do the strategy. For our purposes here today, if you just kind of want to pick maybe 1 or 2 of your like big goals and kind of start thinking about the strategy behind those, and then you can come back and sort of think about some of those other goals as well. Does that make sense? Yep, I'm seeing some nodding. Okay, awesome. So back to our fancy timer. Let me get back from our ad. Okay. All right, see everybody in 3 minutes. Okay, we're back. How did that go? That was a tall order. So maybe something that you want to come back to in a little bit more detail. outside, but I wanted to, so that actually goes faster than you think. I wasn't sure if 3 minutes was like, sometimes it feels like an eternity and sometimes it goes too fast. So good, excellent, good feedback, Sarah. Yeah, so this is, again, I just sort of wanted you to start thinking about those ideas of how to create a strategy and what are those elements that need to go in and into answering that question of like, how am I going to achieve those goals? Does anybody have any questions or anything they wanted to share? No? Okay. So again, just for an example, so as I'm going and creating my fictional press plan, so I picked one of the goals for my author here, which was to get onto 5 podcasts. So then I kind of I started brainstorming some ideas on how I would make that happen. So number 1 is social media, right? And then I wrote down specifically Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So, and then having a Facebook strategy would be, following podcasters on Facebook, getting into podcast communities. Instagram would be, again, searching for podcasters within this author's niche, searching for podcasts who cover writing and publishing. And then with LinkedIn as well, starting to follow or connect with people that I know are either hosts of podcasts or producers of podcasts, or, maybe even an author within a similar genre, and see what podcasts they've been on, right? Start looking around for different databases. So Podchaser is one that I refer to here often. Listen Notes is another great resource for podcasts. Thinking about something like the Podcast Collective, I think it's called. It's like this huge podcasting group on Facebook that also has a paid option for a website where you can access their database of podcasts that are looking for authors, and it's looking for guests, searchable by genre. And then also, so thinking about organic engagement, liking and commenting on the podcast's Facebook pages or Instagram accounts, potentially purchasing a membership to the Podcast Collective, creating a DM strategy. People always forget about DMing. I've gotten my clients on huge podcasts by just sending a DM to the podcast host and be like, hey, are you looking for guests? I've got a great idea. Can I have your email address? It works great. And then, one of the other strategies will be working with me. You guys are all members of my group here, right? Utilizing that time that we have together for our one-on-one sessions or our mini strategy sessions, using that time to, figure out what podcasts you need to be on and then how to reach out to them. So that would be that idea of how am I going to make this happen, right? Here are 5 defined things that I can do to help with that goal of getting onto 5 podcasts. Okay. Does that make sense? Good. I'm seeing a lot of nods. This is good. Okay. So back to our presentation here. So the next step is the objectives. So yes, objectives are different than goals. The objectives are really the steps that you're going to take to make that strategy happen. Okay. It's the measurable proof. So this is the key here, is it has to be measurable. How are you going to know your strategy is working if there's no metrics that you're able to measure? Right. So if you're executing a launch strategy that maybe part of that is building your social media, right? You've got your list of how you're going to build your social media. You're going to boost some posts. Maybe you're going to take out an ad. You're going to do a lead magnet, right? Like you have all of the strategy, but unless you have a way to measure whether that strategy is reaching those goals, there's going to be a disconnect, right? So this is the objectives that we're looking at. Okay. How are you going to measure whether this is working or not, right? What is the proof that you're going to show me that your strategy is leading to your goals? So we're building, right? Like your objectives are supporting your strategy is helping elevate your goals. Okay. And then we have our 4th one coming up in a minute. So this is where I really want you to start thinking of like those steps that you're going to take within that strategy, right? So now even with my idea of my 5 podcasts, we went into a little bit of maybe crossing over to the objectives in terms of like how I was breaking things down. But now we really want to get into like, I want to message if I'm working on my DM strategy, right? So every week I am going to message 5 podcasters through my DMs. The measurement is I want at least 2 of those to convert into some sort of usable lead, right? So this is where you're kind of breaking things down even a little bit further. Okay. Any questions with this one? I know we're getting a little not necessarily obscure, but it's dense, right? So again, maybe just pick one. So maybe, we had a bunch of goals. Maybe you picked a strategy for a couple of goals. Now really start breaking down the objectives for maybe one of those strategies and start writing out some steps you can take in order to support that strategy. Yes? Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. All right. Back to our... Are we liking the music, or is it annoying? Music, yes, no. Okay, good. Tatiana gave me a thumbs up, so it's fine. Okay, awesome. I like it. I think it's kind of fun. Okay, so back to our 3 minutes, and I will see you back in 3 minutes. Okay, I'm back. Here we go. Okay, how do we find that? Obscure, difficult, weird, challenging? Yeah, challenging is good. Okay, so any a bit challenging. Yeah, I mean, I'm asking a lot of you in a 3-minute period. But again, I think it's more just about that process, right? And how you would go about doing this in more of like a real-time situation. Did anybody have any questions? No? Oh yeah, go ahead, Sarah with an H. Oh, both of you Sarahs. Oh goodness. Okay, Sarah with an H, I saw your hand go up first.
So basically at this point, we're kind of going broad to more specific,
Yeah.
really, really nitty gritty detail.
Yep.
So then objectives is the like next level depth
Yep.
of the strategy portion.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. It's those steps that you're going to take to execute the strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can give you an example. I did two on my little notepad here while you guys were working. If that's helpful, I can give you my examples. Sarah without an H, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a little bit, we were just kind of chatting to the side. And I think a big part of what we're doing is going to be getting like business to business type of stuff. So less consumer facing. So it's almost like it's a completely different strategy if you're trying to get in publications, et cetera, that target businesses.
Yes. Yeah.
Just because it's, you know what I mean? Like it's just a different pool of.
Yes. So it is and it isn't. So it is and it isn't. The mindset's a little bit different because you're not thinking broad consumer mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking more niche industry, but the process is the same, right? The process of brainstorming the story ideas, figuring out their frequency, like the actual process, whether you're pitching to like a small niche publication or whether you're pitching to breakfast television, the process is actually very, very, very similar.
Yeah.
It's just the audience you kind of have to like rethink a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more about like contacts and stuff like that, right? Like it's not quite, it's just a different, because I'm not like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like when I do business to business stuff, it's very different. So I guess that was what we sort of were just kind of wrapping our head around, was a portion of it. A big portion of it's going to be consumer facing, obviously, but another side of it. So it's just sort of streaming it slightly separately.
Yeah. And even in the course that in the course that I teach, the Pitch Class Digital, we do talk about the difference between mainstream and niche. And you can actually have slightly different strategies in the way that you approach your topics based on whether you're doing like a mainstream publication like the Globe and Mail, Cityline, or whether you're doing something niche like, you know, an industry publication or and some sort of like trade publication, right? But essentially the way that you are looking for the contact, you're making sure you're within their news cycle, you're understanding their audience, that process is all the same no matter where you're pitching to.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree. You guys are a little bit, you know, I know we're getting into tactics in a minute. That's the next step. Hint, hint. little sneak peek. But yeah, the things, the tools that you're going to use to execute the strategy might be a little bit different than somebody who is doing a more.
I think I might have just been jumping ahead to tactics a little bit in my head of like,
So let me give you the examples that I use just to kind of show you like how we're kind of funneling things down, right? So, you know, my first thing were those goals. So, so I mentioned the 5 podcasts, right? And then I talked about the strategy of like, how am I going to get out of those 5 podcasts? What social media resources am I going to use? You know, what is the strategy behind that? How am I going to get on those podcasts? Then the next step down. So because I've been talking about that goal of 5 podcasts, I shifted a little bit. So 2 of my other goals were, one of them was getting 2 other media appearances. And then in terms of like that step-by-step, right? What am I going to do? What are the objectives? What are those measurable pieces that I can do in order to get myself on 2 other media appearances? Okay. So number 1, brainstorming. What are the publications? What are those? I mean, we say 2 other media outlets. Well, what are they? Is it Cityline? Is it breakfast television? Is it the Globe and Mail? Is it a trade publication? Is it an industry publication? Just start brainstorming, you know, what are those outlets that I want to see this author in? Step number 2 is create the media list, right? Start writing things down, start doing the research and being like, well, you know what? Cityline is really not what I thought it was. It's not where my audience is. Oh, but this other publication is, right? So now you're starting broad with that brainstorm. You're going to narrow it down to your actual media list. Maybe it's 10 contacts. I wrote down here, you know, create a media list with 10 solid media leads. And step number 3 is find the contact information, right? Using my Google, using my Twitter, using databases if I have access to them, finding out who I need to talk to, right? Step number 4 is now my goal is to pitch to 3 outlets per month. right? So this is a 3-month campaign. We're talking about a 3-month launch campaign for this fictional author. So then the step is I want to pitch 3 different publications each month. So for a total of 9 publications at the end of the 3-month period. And then that measurable piece is I want to convert 2 appearances within that 3-month period. Does that make sense? So it's actually like step 1, step 2, steps 3, step 4. How am I measuring this? Well, I have 3 pitches that I'm going to send a month. I want to convert 2 total in that 3-month period. Okay. I'm getting some blank stares. I hope that's just, you guys are just riveted by my like fictional example. And then, again, sort of another example would be, the other goal that I wrote down was to get 2 articles published, right? Authors, I always recommend that my authors are also contributing writers to blogs. Well, how am I going to do that? Again, step number 1, start researching outlets that actually have an opportunity for writing. Step number 2, figure out what their contributor guidelines are. Is it a form? Do they have some published editorial guidelines on their website? Find that information and store it somewhere. Start creating your story ideas. Start thinking about what ideas you want to write for this particular publication, right? Then when we're talking about measurables, submitting 1 query per month. And then the idea is that you're converting 2 published articles by the end of that 3-month campaign. Okay. Does that make sense? You see how now it's like, here are the steps that I'm going to take, right, to execute that strategy to reach those goals. Everyone's like, no. You're all like, you should have sent me a coffee for this one. Okay. Any questions that I can actually answer? Okay. That's fine. Again, this is all just you guys do with this information what you need to, and you guys take away the valuable information, and anything that's not striking a chord with you, just push aside. Okay. So the last piece of this press plan we're going to talk about, which I already kind of alluded to, is tactics. So the tactics are like, so I said to-do list. It is a to-do list, but it really is those tools that you're going to be using. What are those things, those pieces that we're going to use in order to execute all of this together? Okay. Tactics is what we're going to be talking about next. So we're not going to do a 3-minute brainstorm on this particular one, because the next step is really, we're getting into the tactics. Okay. And that's where our execution plan is going to come in. And that's where our pitch calendars are going to come in. Those are tactics. Those are tools that you're using to move this whole thing forward. Okay. So we're not going to do our 3 minutes here. Okay. So if you guys joined my press workshop, it wasn't a workshop, it was a masterclass last week. I just talked a lot. We really talked about the idea of stacking, of layering. Okay. So your press plan really is 3 layers. And, I know I'm dating myself a bit here, but like when I went to elementary school, we had like overhead projectors, right? Remember those big overhead projectors? And you have like acetate, right? Thin pieces of plastic, right? And then your teacher would put like 1 layer down, and then they put a bar graph on top, and then you put a pie graph on, and you can start seeing the layers build up, right? But the whole thing is being projected onto that whiteboard in your classroom, right? This is what we're creating. We're creating 3 separate layers that when it's projected on the blackboard, you have a full press plan. Okay. Layer number 1, the tactic, the tool that we're using is the 2023 pitch calendar. Okay. This is where I want you to start thinking about putting yourself in the news cycle, right? What are those areas or, those times of year where, and I said, you can ask yourself, where can I shine? Right. Sarah, just because Sarah without an H, you and I talked this week. So, separate from your not-for-profit, but you and I talked about the idea of back to school, right? That back to school would be a really great place for you to shine with your family content, right? Back to school happens every year around the same time. Most publications and media outlets are covering something to do with back to school because it's just such a massive time of year. We know this is coming. it comes around the same time every year. The same media outlets cover back to school content every year, right? If you have that in your head and you know, okay, I can really shine, I can really add something to the conversation around back to school, you need to build that into your strategy. So it does, all of a sudden it's August and you're like, crap, I am way too late to pitch all that great content I thought of back in December. Yeah, Tatiana's like, yeah, okay. This is so common, right? And this is again where that benefit of having this long lens plan comes into view. So this is really the idea. And again, this is entirely how you're creating this plan. So if this is a full calendar year, 23 months or 23 months, 12 months, 2023, you're going to want to look at the whole year. Okay. You're going to want to look at what is happening in January. Okay. Now we're talking New Year's content. We're talking, oh my God, New Year, new you. Bleh, I hate that. But the fitness industry, right, booms this time of year. Wellness, health, talks about budgeting. Mental health is a huge topic in January. Okay. So those would be, now we're getting into layer 3, but this is starting to think about where in that news cycle you can start inserting yourself. Okay. If you're thinking big picture, you're thinking the full year, or you could be thinking the next 3 months or whatever chunk of time. Maybe it's a 6-month launch period for your not-for-profit. Maybe it's a 3-month, as my fictional little client here it's a 3-month launch plan for a book, right? The other thing is you don't want to be thinking about planning, like if you're launching a book on January 1st, like you've missed the boat, I'm sorry, on the whole press plan, right? You want to be looking ahead a little bit. It doesn't matter what your timeline is. You do want to have a little bit of lead time in order to start building up those contacts and doing all of that great back end work. But no matter what you're working on today, and doesn't matter what time period, you want to, we're going to give you 5 minutes this time. I want you to go in to the 2023 calendar. I want you to look up the months that you're going to be executing this plan, or maybe it's the whole year. And I want you just to start brainstorming and jotting down some themes, right? Back to school would be a theme. Spring cleaning is a theme, right? Or specific holidays. Maybe you're going to shine around Mother's Day content, or the awareness days. There's tons and tons of awareness days, right? Mental health days, different health and wellness days. Also different celebrations, right? Cultural celebrations, memorial days, right? Like, so start looking at that period, whether it's a 12-month period, whether it's a 6-month period, whether it's a 3-month period, and just start jotting down some of those times, those themes, those days that you're going to really be able to shine. Okay, so that's what we're doing. I'm going to give you 5 minutes this time because I do want you to go into that calendar and start looking at stuff and just jotting down those, those areas. Okay, so just give me a second because I have to switch up my my YouTube counter to the 5-minute counter. There we go. Okay. All right. So 5 minutes this time. And yeah, I want you to really utilize it and take your time and go through those calendars. If you have any questions about the calendar, or if you're stuck, I will have my chat open. So just feel free to throw a question up in the chat and I can respond through there. Okay. Did that go really fast? I felt it went so fast. I only did a 3-month period for my fictional author here. And yeah, that went really fast. So again, maybe something you want to go back to and spend a little bit more time doing. But again, the idea was just to sort of like get the idea of what the process is like. So any questions or anything anybody would like to share? Sarah says she only got through the January calendar. It's fair. You have a lot of content, so I believe it. Yeah, so why don't I kind of share what I was working on for my fictional author. So I picked a fictional launch date of April 1st. So I'm going to pretend that my author's book is launching on Amazon on April 1st. And the book is about starting a new business as a new mom. Okay. So then the idea is like, well, let's look at the calendar and see where this author can shine during that 3-month period post-launch. So some of the stuff I wrote down was there's a World Day for Creativity and Innovation. How much fun would it be to talk about starting a business and be within that space of creativity and innovation, and how moms and female entrepreneurs can really lead the way in that space, right? That's a great story idea. There's also World Book Day during that time. Like that's a given. That's an obvious one. There's also Canadian Infertility Week. So maybe this author, this mom struggled with infertility, and maybe that's built into one of the reasons that she started a business and ultimately wanted to write a book, right? So is there a backstory there? What is the story behind the book? What is the motivation for this author to create the book, right? And then that's where they can talk about that type of content. Mother's Day obviously fits into this time period as well. The Day of Action for Women's Health. So you can talk about the importance of supporting women's mental health and how starting a business can really amplify their mental health, how it can really get them out of that like mom brain and that idea of only identifying as a mom, starting a business to be able to kind of take that identity back. There's a lot you can do there around women's health and mental health. There's also micro, small, and medium enterprise day. So this is a day to honor small businesses. What a great time to talk about the idea of starting a business and encouraging moms to start businesses, right? So you can kind of see where I'm starting to build in these days where that I can pitch something very specific to an outlet. And then also the idea of like just April, May being a time of renewal, right? Of rejuvenation, right? We're coming out of, especially in Canada, we're coming out of a long winter. We're starting to see the first signs of spring, right? Well, can we work a story idea around creating a renewal in mothers, right? How a new business, how getting out of the house and doing something besides just mothering all day, right? How is that framed around renewal, rejuvenation, right? So do you see how I'm kind of now starting to build story ideas around the theme of the book, but then also my author as well, and that the author as a person, right? Not just as an author, as a book subject. Okay, does that kind of make sense? Okay, did you guys struggle with this? Like, was it just like that you needed more time, or were you having trouble coming up with ideas, or was this like you got so many ideas you don't know what to do with yourself? Yeah, lots of ideas. I'm seeing some nods with the lots of ideas. Yeah. So, yeah, I think with anything, I think a lot of it's just like starting with a brain dump, right? You know, if you know, going through and spending some time with that calendar. I mean, that's a really, really important resource, right? To have at your fingertips, where you've got the entire year, basically the entire year's news cycle laid out for you, spending some time and going through that. And whether you're doing it in 3 months, 6 months, or whether you're doing it in a full calendar year, really having a good sense of like what's coming up, right? And then that will lead to one of our other layers that's coming up is we're going to be adding in those execution plans as well. So any questions before I move on? Okay. Where did my presentation go? Oh, there it is. Okay, so in terms of tactics, tools and tactics, this is our first tool, is really being able to utilize that pitch calendar and really having a good understanding of the news cycle, essentially so you can stay ahead of it, right? So you're not always like, oh, today's World Book Day. Shoot, I should have did some content about that. No, World Book Day is coming up in April. So, start getting prepared now. That's really what that layer is about. So the second layer. So now we've got the calendar laid out. We understand now, you have an idea of the news cycle. You have an understanding of where you want to see yourself, right, in the media during that period. Okay, well then the second layer of that is it has to align with what is happening in your business, right? It has to align with those launches and those initiatives. And I know Dr. Sarah with an H down there, you and I have talked a lot about working with your business's cycles, right? I mean, you don't want to do a big push on, so say for your course, you don't want to do a big push on supporting prenatal health in January to March if your course isn't launching until May, right? There's just a lot of missed opportunities. That entire audience that you've been reaching prior to the launch, now you have to, you've laid the foundation with it, but then there's another step where you actually have to try to now reach back out to them and convert them to actually purchasing, right? But if okay, I've got a course launching on May 1st, now I can start creating content around that course and then getting myself into the media. So then when people see me, they're able to purchase that course immediately, or they're able to buy that book immediately, right? It's not, there's no missed opportunities. So this is where the misalignment can sometimes happen, where you're like, okay, I have a great idea for a story that I want to pitch to the media, but there's no follow-up to it, right? There's nothing that there's no actionable step that audience can take that's going to convert in a real way. You can always create a lead magnet to gather emails. That's great. That is a very specific goal, right? Is to gather those emails and create that email list. But if we're talking straight sales and conversion here, you don't want any missed opportunity for that audience member to say, yes, that book sounds amazing. I'm going on Amazon and I'm buying it right now, right? Or that course sounds awesome. I don't want to wait 3 months to try to remember to go back and buy that course. I want to go and buy it now. Okay, so that's where the misalignment can come in. And then sometimes I hear people saying, well, my media coverage didn't convert. I'm like, well, what was your call to action? And they're like, I didn't have one because my course isn't built yet. Okay, well, that's great. Congrats on the media coverage, but there's no conversion piece there. So this is where we want to make sure those alignments, that's where that second layer comes in, is to make sure that your news cycle and where you're slotting yourself into the news cycle perfectly aligns with what's going on in your business. Okay. So then the question is like, what are you working on this year? And again, this could be this year, or it could be that period, right? If you're building a strategy for one specific launch, like you already know what's going on. But, if you're thinking big picture, thinking about product launches, thinking about your brand initiatives, thinking about different marketing objectives, right? What is going on in your business that you're going to be able to use the media to help leverage, help push that forward, right? This is also, again, bigger picture, but if you're understanding what your annual peaks and valleys are and planning for them, right? Like if you know that your business starts to taper off a little bit in the summer, right? And you're looking to fill some spots in the summer, you really need to be laying that foundation like in early spring or even late winter, right? Where you're doing some media coverage, right? Getting your name out there and then looking to book those clients for the summer to fill in that gap, right? So it's understanding where those peaks and valleys are. Another client that I'm working with, like she is absolutely booked solid until like March or April next year. So I'm like, you know what? We need to cool it on the media coverage, because even if she was to convert a new client, she can't take them until like May, right? So she is at a peak right now. We're not going to really do a big push until she's starting to get towards that end of the peak, and then she's looking to fill in those slots. Does that make sense? So really just having an understanding of the flow of your own business, right? And then working that into your press plan. Also thinking about speaking engagements, other appearances or collaborations, right? If you have a speaking engagement booked on a really interesting topic, you should also be using that to pitch to the news cycle as well. Pitch to different media outlets, right? If somebody is booking you for a speaking engagement, they're interested in the topic, right? So it probably means somebody else is interested in that topic, right? And then utilize that. So you're not always constantly thinking about new story ideas, right? Okay, I got a speaking engagement. This would be a great story idea. Let's start pitching around it as well at the same time. And then also, depending on your project, this is really where those important dates and your timeline comes in, right? What's your launch date? When is it going to be live on the website? When are you going to be accepting donations? When is your launch party? All of these pieces that goes into that broader launch timeline. What are those dates and how can you utilize the media to help push those dates forward? If you have a book launch party, or if you have a grand opening, right, you need to plan for that so that you can have the media in attendance, right? And that's going to take some forethought, right? So having those dates and timelines mapped out for your business or your specific product or launch, and then having it aligned with when you're pitching to the media. Okay, does that make sense? So really what we're talking here is about, it's going back to the course that we, a lot of you guys did like a year and a half ago. It's the idea of aligning those business goals with your media goals, right? If your business goal, if you don't understand your business goals, your media goals the media is really not gonna do what you need it to do. This is the same thing, right? You have to have those timelines. There needs to be some alignment, or there's gonna be missed opportunities, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so probably just do 3 minutes this time because I feel like you guys all have a pretty good handle on your business. We'll do 3 minutes. I want you just to start sketching out and thinking about what you have in the pipeline for your business, either for the year, or what are those key dates that needs to happen for the product or the specific thing that you're building your strategy for. Okay, we'll just do 3 minutes this time. I think I've also talked to most of you guys about this particular piece during our one-on-one sessions. Okay. All right. Okay, so just 3 minutes this time. Again, I've got my chat open if anybody needs my help. I can get back to my screen. There we go. Okay, see you in 3 minutes. Okay. How did everybody find that? Yeah, I think I'm, it's challenging, right? Like we don't like to think, our brains don't like to think that far ahead sometimes. So, and especially if you don't, if you're working bigger picture, it can be hard to think about kind of what's coming down the pipeline, but I think I have a good handle on your businesses. So, I mean, feel free to ask any questions or, you know, let me know if there's anything specific I can do to help push this forward. Any questions or anything you guys want to share? No? Okay. I mean, I wrote a couple things down for my little fictional author, but I feel like it's, you know, with something like a book launch that I'm kind of like workshopping here, you know, there's those standard dates that we all need to be worried about. Like, you know, when does the pre-launch piece start? You know, the drop date on Amazon, that first 24-hour period. And then really when you're working with a 3-month strategy, I would say there isn't really a lot of timeline. It's just like you want to do as much, you know, as much as you possibly can in that first 3-month period. So yeah, I don't know that my example is going to help all that much in this case. So if you have any specific questions about your own timeline, like I can, we can, especially during the Q&A at the end, you can let me know. Okay, great. Moving along. So we have one last layer of our press plan that we're going to talk about here. So this layer 3 is the idea of the long and the short leads. So this is, I'm not going to have you guys jump off and do the time. Because, you know, there is, this is a little bit of like kind of just thinking about working with that news cycle and then just kind of planning when you're going to start pitching to each of these outlets that you want to see, and really understanding when you need to start pitching, right? So, yeah. So as I said here, the press plan, you know, when you're thinking of short and long leads, I mean, the short and like, so the standard term short and long leads, we really are looking at, so like a long lead here is that usually 4 to 5 months. Print is usually the best example of a long lead. I do also know that a lot of the major TV stations, they're probably looking at like I'm working with a couple bigger TV stations right now. They're looking, I'm pitching 4 to 6 months out at this point. Short leads, we're looking at, say, like a day. I just had a client in the City News Kitchener. They were interviewed on Thursday. The article was posted on Friday. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like it could be a day lead, or, you know, usually short lead, we're probably looking at about the month to like maybe 2-month period you could kind of include in your short leads. And then if you're at all thinking holiday gift guides, so whether you have a product that you want to be featured in a holiday gift guide, or you have some content idea around the holidays, Brenda, like organizing around the holidays, or like decluttering before the holidays, or, you know, Sarah without an H, you know, family content in terms of like tips for shopping for your kids for the holidays. All of the holiday content, you're probably looking at a 6-month lead time. Unless you're looking at City News Kitchener, they're not doing that stuff 6 months out. But if you're looking at any of the bigger stations, any of the bigger blogs, if you're looking to have anything product reviewed or anything featured, a product featured in those gift guides, you really, really are looking at a 6-month period. So that's the third layer. So you've got your first layer is like, how am I going to work in that news cycle? The second layer is, how does that news cycle work with my business timelines? And then the third piece of that is that execution. When am I actually going to start pitching this stuff, right? If you want to be in a back to school issue of Today's Parent, right now, you're looking at print, you're looking at a major mainstream media, you're looking at a 6-month lead time for a back to school issue. Usually their issues come out like before back to school. So you're probably looking at August. So then you're backing up 6 months. Like you should maybe be starting to think about pitching now sort of thing. Right. So like, that's what I mean. Like having an understanding of, yes, I want to be in a back to school issue, but then that third layer is like, well, how do I need to make that happen? When do I need to start pitching? Right. And the biggest resource that I can give you really is those execution workbooks, which we've been posting, and I'm going to do another screen share, and I'm going to kind of show you how to add those execution plans to your press plan. But the other thing I wanted to mention here is if you are doing a full year, planning out your short and long leads can be really overwhelming. I mean, you obviously, if there are the really key times that you know you want to be in, if it is around holidays, if it is something big like back to school, or if you have like a really specific like Thanksgiving content or Black Friday content as well. My God, Black Friday was a gong show this year. If you have anything around like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday, like this stuff, you want to start, you want to make sure that you've got it all planned out, right? And you know when you need to start pitching to that stuff. But realistically, even if you're doing a press plan for the entire calendar year of 2023, I would break it down into 6-month chunks. So even when I'm working with my clients, we do everything in 6-month chunks. I will create a very detailed press plan. Like, obviously I know if there's something outside of that 6 months that I need to be cognizant of. But usually we'll do a 6-month plan. And then at the end of the 6 months, you kind of review everything, right? What worked, what didn't, what did I... It's my dog's best friend, the Amazon guy, who's here multiple times a day now. Buddy, it's okay. Yeah, so you want to look at what was working and what wasn't working. What did you miss out on? What do you wish that you had contributed? Buddy, can you chill? He weighs 20 pounds. You think he'd weigh like 100 the way that he's barking? He's 20 pounds. Yeah, so take it in chunks. Take it in. If I would never recommend doing a full 12-month plan in terms of like lead time. But just get it more detailed 6 months and then reevaluate, see what worked, what didn't, and then create your second 6 months of the year. Okay. So I'm going to do a screen share with the execution plan because I just sort of want to show you how we can really work with those. Okay. Okay, YouTube, there we go. Okay, can you guys see my execution plans that I pulled up in, is my screen share working correctly? Yeah, okay, so these are our execution plans. So the December one, I just sort of want to show you how you can add this as a tool or a tactic to your overall strategy. So I mean, this is your notable dates. I mean, this really is kind of a bit of a reiteration of the calendar that we've provided. As I'm going through, I am updating them as well. So there you will see some new dates that come up. But essentially, this is just giving you a good idea of what is coming up in December. And then this is really what I want you to pay attention to is the short lead pitch angles. So this is that 2 to 8 week period, right? So we are looking at December to January. And these are just ideas, topics, themes that really work with this time of year, right? Like mental health around the holidays, avoiding burnout at home and in work, managing pressures of the holiday, personal. So there's I think it's World Disability Awareness Month or week. So it's like personal experiences with disabilities, how you work with how your business supports disabilities. A lot of holiday stuff. Here's the very last minute gift guides. There's still, guys, I'm still seeing queries come up on Haro for gift guide pitches. So like you can pitch down to the wire. I wouldn't recommend it, but you certainly can. Inflation, obviously, if there's anything that you can talk about inflation, budgeting this time of year, how inflation is affecting our holiday spending this year, getting into some more fun content, holiday parties, create recipes, food tips. Like these are really ideas and themes that you can take and build story ideas for that short lead period. Okay. And then here's just sort of a, this is just a little bit of like a walkthrough, right? Like you can write down the topics. So like budgeting, and then your expertise, budgeting for families around the holidays and how inflation. So you can start like breaking it down a little bit more. This is not what I wanted to show you. And then you get into the lead, the long leads. Okay. So now we're looking into April and May. Like I'm not making this up. Right now for my retainer clients, I am pitching stories into April and May. Like, and I'm still getting like, oh, can you pitch us again in the new year for the following, now we're getting into June. Like this is why the plan becomes really important, is because this stuff does matter. And if you don't pitch at the right time, you could be missing huge opportunities, right? So, obviously themes around spring cleaning, recycling, upcycling, donating, lots of stuff around fashion trends, health and nutrition, huge topic in the spring, right? Healthy food recipes, outdoor activities, tax season. Right? If you have any tips or tricks on getting your taxes, having, your experience as a small business owner with tax season, right? Like Earth Day is coming up, World Art Day is coming up. So having these ideas and starting to pitch this stuff like now is really, really going to be beneficial, especially if you are looking to hit some of these really key pieces as part of that larger launch strategy. Yeah. So that's that. So I want you guys to utilize those execution guides. I create them for you guys. And they do become important as a tool to help move you through this press plan. Okay. So yeah, so that's our layers. So layer number 1 is understanding the news cycle. Layer number 2 is understanding your business's cycle. And then the third is really like, that when am I going to pitch? What is the plan around pitching? Right. And usually, again, the execution plan kind of walks you through like, pitch this many short leads this month, pitch this many long leads, right? Like it does break you down a little bit, like step by step on how to do it. But yeah, it is important to keep that stuff in mind. And if you don't have a plan, you're going to miss opportunities. So, okay, that's my spiel. I hope you feel like you got something out of it.